It's time for the 1430 Connection on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM, spotlighting news, newsmakers, and important community issues. Now, with this week's edition of the 1430 Connection, here is WNAV news anchor Donna Cole.
Welcome to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio today with me, and I'm very glad to have them with me, Marguerite, Whilden, and Jeff Popp. We're going to be talking about our state reptile. Thank you both for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
All right. So for those that don't know, what is our state reptile? And I'm looking at two
of them, yes.
Two babies.
We have the diamondback terrapin as our state reptile.
And they are incredibly cute. For those that didn't know a reptile can be incredibly cute, take my word for it. Tell me what the Terrapin Institute is.
So we're a nonprofit that was started back in 2003 to simply protect and conserve abundant populations of diamondback terrapins and other turtle species in Maryland. And so we work with private property owners, landowners to do habitat work. I know Marguerite does a lot of consulting on the Eastern Shore. We do a Head Start program that Marguerite started back in 1999, where terrapins are placed in schools to be raised by school children for 9 months, and then they're released at the end of the year. And that gives the children a chance to learn about the terrapin, the ecology of the Chesapeake Bay, as well as kind of connect one-on-one with the species as a whole. And they kind of get that connection to the bay as well. So
I got to say, a Head Start program for these babies is just the most, it's ridiculously cute when you look at your Facebook page and see some of the young kids with these baby terrapins.
Yes. Yeah, it's very cute and never gets old. I've been doing it since I was 15, and I started with as a volunteer for Marguerite when she was with the state of Maryland. And I raised my first three. They were the Three Stooges. Marguerite gave me 3 terrapins to raise, and they were the Three Stooges. They were from Calvert County, and they really got me hooked. And I've always been into nature, but I got hooks on the bay. I had really no relationship with the bay. I grew up in Baltimore, and so it was a way for me to connect to the bay. And now I do bay work all the time.
Marguerite is here, but she's in a silent mode because she, like almost everyone else I know, is getting over an illness. So you might hear her interject a few words here and there, and this is not the way her voice normally sounds. Yes, Marguerite?
That's correct.
Okay, there you go. I heard, so you said it was started in 2003, but I see on the internet in various places 1998. I guess that's when Marguerite legitimately, yeah.
Yes.
Under the auspices of the Department of Natural Resources. We actually had the name as a consortium of people that would help us learn and put together a very as comprehensive as possible of a program. And
it's because somebody had to look out for our state reptile.
Sure, and I didn't really know that much about it, but I was hooked just like everyone else because of the intrigue. It was actually in fisheries management at that point because it was still harvested.
Right.
And we didn't know much about the harvest. I was intrigued by the history of it in that goes back to the 1700s as far as being classified then and so forth. And, there's a lot of intriguing stories about it. It probably, Lafayette and George Washington supposedly dined on it on the eve of the Battle of Yorktown, stuff like that. It was perhaps maybe the only protein that revolutionary soldiers were able to get at that point.
Interesting.
Because you could drive it out to the fields live, and I hate to think about eating them, but it sustained our country in many ways. And then it became very elite, like in the early 1900s, late 1800s. There were farms, and there's a wonderful article by Gene Myers, and he has a couple interesting quotes about poaching terrapins. You might as well poach a racehorse than try to take someone's terrapins.
So already recognizing the need for conservation.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's another interesting feature of it. Originally, it was, if we can learn through this species, it's so engaging, then we can extend to other species. Because, I was working with fisheries then, and it would extend or transfer to other species, and we could do the same with stewardship, because only 13% of the population actually fishes. The rest of our state is getting so metropolitan, or they're just not. They just choose not to fish. There's nothing.
What is the status of the Maryland diamondback terrapin now? Is it threatened? Is it on any list?
So in Maryland, the terrapin is not recognized directly as being endangered, but the problem is that they're such a long-lived species that nobody really knows. They were harvested until 2007, where large numbers were being taken out of the bay. Our large females were targeted for food markets in Maryland and other places as well, being sent overseas. And so nobody really knows the official status. And as a precaution, they are on Maryland's B list of turtle species, where they're a species of special concern. Basically, it's something that they want to make sure that people aren't harvesting out of the wild on purpose. But there's no real designation. Unfortunately,
it's very difficult. See, we had a very good relationship with watermen, I thought, when we were trying to conserve. In fact, we had terrapins set up at Riverside, Cantlers, Riverside Inn, and had a great deal of interest from the watermen's community. When it became a non-harvested species, for some reason, the management of it shifted. And because it's so much like a fish, it maybe should belong within that context.
Right.
I don't care who manages it. It's just that it swims out there it's not like a spotted turtle or pond turtles.
Yeah.
It's out there amongst
So
everything
the
else.
relationship with some of the watermen did change.
We just had a good relationship in our experience, because that's how I learned about the fishery. That's how I learned how they were harvested. We had a waterman on our task force that Jeff was actually the student representation. It was a governor's task force that was convened in 2000, and it had a broad spectrum of representatives, Jeff's being from the student body, and we had a teacher, we had a waterman, we had a scientist. I was the staff person at the time. We had a chairman just from the general public, whereas typically species are managed by stakeholders rather than those that really pay the freight.
Yeah.
Meaning everyone is contributing to this conservation effort. So I thought it was very well rounded.
Jeff, how have you seen it change from, you're saying it could be a little bit more contentious now because all of a sudden the law has been laid down.
Right. So now you can no longer harvest them legally. Unfortunately, they're still being caught in fishing gear. And so the agency, as Marguerite was saying, that was the one regulating that, which was fisheries, unfortunately has no say in it now because it's being managed through wildlife. And so if a terrapin's caught in a net, that could be, technically fisheries could have done some regulation. However, the way it works right now, it's a little harder to enforce actions because it's through another agency, or part of the agency.
Okay.
Yeah, and the other agency typically has their constituency, which is hunters, birders maybe, whereas the fisheries group had a very well-founded constituency in watermen, sport fishermen. Such as the Coastal Conservation, and then the Watermen's Association. Whereas now it just makes it a little awkward for actual implementation. That's one thing that I've always felt, and another good example we could make with Terrapin, is that if we could just enforce what we have on the books now, I think we'd be ahead of the game. But enforcement is always
tricky.
Sticky point.
Yeah. All right, let's take a short break. When we come back, more about our state reptile. This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. We will be right back. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. I'm in the studio today with Marguerite Whilden and Jeff Popp, who head up the Terrapin Institute. Their whole focus is on our state reptile, the diamondback terrapin, and I have two adorable ones in the studio with me today. We'll share photos. Jeff, I didn't hear of the Terrapin Institute. I know you've been working in the background, as Marguerite said, for many years, making sure our state reptile has got the protections it needed and enforcing that, or helping to enforce that. I recently heard of you through two different ways, one at the Annapolis Harbour Center and two with Hillsmere Beach and what was found there. So let's start with the Annapolis Harbour Center.
Sure. So back, I think it was last March, during a snow day, I was home working from home for my full-time job at the Chesapeake Bay Trust. And I read on Facebook that they were going to be redoing and retrofitting the pond at the Annapolis Harbour Center. And if anybody's ever been there, they know that there's a ton of turtles in there. And so I contacted the project manager at the time at Anne Arundel County, and she was very open to having us come in and assess the situation and figure out a plan to make sure that all those turtles were safe
So
during
let's talk about what
construction.
happens. The pond is drained, but
Sure.
the turtles
So-
don't necessarily know that. They burrow down
Right.
and then
Exactly. So if you bulldoze a forest for construction or to development, you have, those deer, those birds can fly away, run away. Turtles, unfortunately, they don't get that. So for millions of years, they've been basically hunkering down. That shell's their protection. And so in this pond, if they were to drain that, those turtles would typically just bury in the mud. And hope that the water would come back eventually. They don't know what's going on, and so our
but
goal.
many would probably not last.
Exactly, because the heavy construction equipment was our major concern.
Right.
They'd be fine buried in the mud for a while. It was that heavy construction equipment, and so we worked to get some traps, and we had partners with the South River Federation. Maryland State Highway Administration was great help, and of course Anne Arundel County and the Annapolis Harbour Center, and we trapped 75 turtles out of that pond. Which seemed to be the majority. Anytime you looked at that pond, there was a ton of turtles. But the last day of trapping, we could not visually spot any turtles in that pond. So we were able to temporarily relocate them. They're in their temporary home for the winter right now, which is another stormwater pond about a mile down the road.
Where is that?
We prefer not to say.
Okay.
It's a pretty public area. We don't want anybody going there and collecting.
Fair enough.
But we do they're in there hunkered down for the winter, and then early this spring we are working with State Highway to they're going to actually retrofit their own pond, and so what they'll be doing is draining that pond. At which point in time we can go collect those turtles, assess them, look at them, make sure that they're all healthy, and then release them back into their pond that's now finished.
At the Annapolis Harbour Center.
Yes.
That's truly great. And as you
Yes.
were aware, we tried to save one, my daughter
Yes.
and I don't know if he's included in that or she is included. Is it easy to sex turtles?
So it depends on the species. Some are harder than others. Males generally have longer tails.
Okay.
And then, there's other features you can use to figure
All
it out.
right,
But
so-
the cool thing about that project is that it's really never been done.
I think it was amazing.
Yeah, and each one of those turtles is now marked. And so we'll know exactly which turtles that we pulled out of there. They're individually marked. We can assess them if they've grown in their temporary habitat. Are they reproducing? And then once we put them back into the pond, since it's a fresh start, any new turtles that aren't marked that show up, we know that they've either been released there, which we encourage people never to release pet turtles, or they've been produced in that pond by the adults.
Okay, is there a diversity of species in the pond? Was it just one type of turtle or multiple?
Sure. So we had mostly eastern painted turtles, which is native species, which is a good thing. We also had snapping turtles. We had eastern mud turtles and eastern musk turtles, and we had 2 red-bellied turtles, a yellow-bellied slider, which was obviously a released pet, and a ton of red-eared sliders. And that's a good point to talk about. Don't release your pet red-eared sliders. They can give diseases and pathogens to our wild populations. So we encourage people to, if you're going to get a pet turtle, hang on to them and realize what you're getting into, because they live a long time.
And
Yeah.
how did you find out about the Terrapin Institute?
So I was with a member of the Mid-Atlantic Turtle and Tortoise Society, who Marguerite was with at the time, and she had an article in one of their newsletters about raising terrapins, and I got in touch with her that way.
All right, we're going to take another short break. When we come back, we're going to hear about another cool thing that happened during the summer. This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. We will be right back. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. In the studio with me, I have Marguerite Whilden and Jeff Popp. They head up the Terrapin Institute. Their whole focus is on keeping turtles and terrapins safe. What's the difference between turtles and terrapins?
So all terrapins are turtles, not all turtles are terrapins. Terrapin is just kind of a term that was given to this species being a river turtle.
All right, very good. What happened during the summer in Hillsmere?
So the famous Hillsmere hatchlings. So we got a call on July 4th, 4th of July, about a turtle nesting on the Hillsmere kayak launch, their little beach there near their marina. And so, a lot of the work we do is based on citizens and kind of a citizen science, people kind of alerting us to nesting activity. And so we We were able to do some detective work. We had some of the community folks take pictures. Luckily,
You got a call
Yes.
from somebody that said,
yes, there's a turtle nesting on our beach.
okay. It's cool that somebody knew to contact you.
Exactly, yes. And luckily they had contacted the South River Federation, who we were working with at the time on the pond. And so they were able to, we got a hold of them. Luckily their dog, Diamond, she's also famous.
Wait, the dog is named Diamond?
The dog was named Diamond, yes.
And the Diamond discovered the diamondback
Terrapin,
terrapins.
yes,
How cool is
nesting.
that it was meant to be?
On the 4th of July.
Yes.
Exactly. So that's typically late time for terrapins to nest. They'd be on their second clutch. And so we were able to get pictures of both Diamond the dog and the diamondback terrapin nesting. Luckily, the dog owner took pictures. And so we confirmed that it was terrapin. And if you've ever been to that beach, you know how small it is.
It is really small, yes. It's not Hillsmere Beach. It's over by the marina.
Right. And so there's a lot of human activity there. And so we decided the best thing for those eggs was to collect them and hatch them, and we put them into our program, our Head Start program. And so we collected them. There was 17 eggs we pulled out of there.
Is the mother, as a mother, I have to ask this
Sure.
question. Is the mother still around, and is she there then looking at you saying, what are you doing? Don't take my babies.
That's a great question. So terrapins, they lay a bunch of eggs in hopes that a few will survive. And so once they lay their eggs, they say good luck, and they go back to the water. So no, she was not there. So
Interesting. Much different than my species.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So we were able to collect the eggs, and we did hatch them out. 100% of them survived. And the cool thing was, so we get a lot of calls about nesting on the eastern shore, very few on the western shore. And so this was very unique in that we were able to place local hatchlings with local students. Through our Head Start program, we were able to place hatchlings with Hillsmere Elementary School, Keys School, and several other schools throughout the state.
That's just awesome.
Yeah, and so they'll be able to raise them. In fact, I just checked on some last week, and they're growing like crazy, as they should be.
And do they need, what happens over the holidays when the kids and teachers are not at the school? Somebody just comes in and feeds them, or?
Right, so somebody will come in on the weekends and feed them,
Okay.
or on long holidays, they'll either take them home or come in into the building and feed them. Yep. But the goal is to get them about the size of a cheeseburger, about 4 inches. By the end of the year, the students, again, get that connection with the terrapin, but they also are able to grow that terrapin to a point where it's a little more predator proof. And once it's released, hopefully if you're using the turtle excluder devices on your crab pots, which is the law if you're a recreational crab pot, if you have a recreational crab pot, that the terrapin can't go in there. And so that's the size about where, it prevents them from going in there and drowning, unfortunately.
And predators are who? I can tell you birds. I saw a bird in my backyard with a turtle recently.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So we want to make sure there's abundant populations because, animals have to eat too. So we know bald eagles are predators on the adults. We know that's crabs, raccoons, foxes, dogs, skunks.
Just about everything
Pretty
out
much
there.
anything. Crows.
Yeah.
Sometimes we used to, when we were monitoring on the eastern shore for a while, if we would hear a certain sound by a crow, we would know to go over there because they were eating a terrapin nest. So they had a food source. So there's a ton of predators.
Yeah.
We always tell the kids they're like jelly beans. Everything likes to eat them. So we want to make sure that there are abundant populations. So nature has what they need to have a proper ecosystem, but also we have that really pretty species of turtle for generations to come.
All right. For more information, where can people find you?
Right now, we're working on a new website, heartheturtle.org. But also, we have I think right now for the...
By the way, for those that don't know, our University of Maryland is Fear the Turtle. So Hear the Turtle is pretty cool. I like that.
Yes. And the best thing for the most up-to-date information, our day-to-day things, is on our Facebook page. And you can just search the Terrapin Institute.
Okay.
And there's a terrapin there's a terrapin as our logo, as our profile picture.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Going through a terrapin bycatch reduction device, so you can see that as well.
Great. And these terrapins that you brought in today, how old are they?
These guys are teenagers, so these were Head Started animals that were from the last round that we did.
And they're going to be let go when?
These guys these are our demonstration animals.
Okay.
These guys can't be let go. They were treated with medicine, so that was part of our deal. We can't release them after that.
All right. I can't thank you both enough for doing what you do. It's amazing. And for joining me today in the studio.
Thank you very much for having us.
This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. We will see you next week.